friends. Welcome back. We're discussing Catholic art. What is it? Jesus, the Incarnation, the God-man. The divine had manifested in Jesus, a true man. And because of that, it was acceptable to make images of him, just as it was of the saints.
Right.
If people could see Jesus with their eyes, hear him with their ears, and touch him with their hands, he was capable of being reproduced. And if we just take a little, back to that that definition, is endowed by their, is that ability to create intention artifacts or performs intentionally endowed by their makers.
Right.
And do you want to say something there, or do you want me to continue?
Well, I think that was sort of pertaining to my point at the end of the last talk about how art after the incarnation is, everything has to change after the incarnation. What we are capable of imagining, what we are, like you said, there is, and I think that it once again goes back to that concept of the percept, that what you can perceive of with your, when you knock on a table, when you put a slice of orange in your mouth, right? I mean, once you've had that experience with your senses, right? A sensual pleasure, and I don't mean that word in the sense, unfortunately, of the erotic pornographic interpretation that it means. What I mean is when we engage in the reality of the world as God created it for us with our five senses, we are capable then of creating this percept in our mind, which is the matter that is necessary within ourselves to be able to reflect on it more and to then draw it out in some other means, right? You taste an orange and you think, oh, I wonder how that would taste with chocolate, and then suddenly you make this delicious chocolate orange cake or something like that, right? We play with these things inside of our head. And after the incarnation, truly, man did have an existential, sensual experience with our Lord, which, like you said, then permits us to imagine him with us, because we can see him in our mind's eye with Peter. We know that he hugged him. We know that he laughed with them. We know that he wept. And so once we have that really, truly interior perception of God as man interacting with us, then it's only normative for the human person who is a co-creator with God, right? To bring forth that, to manifest that into the world so that other people can have that experience in different ways, but also the same experience.
That's correct. That's correct. And art in the New Testament, just as the defining features of the community of believers, had three aspects. It was Christocentric, there was a rule of faith, or what we would call the credo, and it was ecclesial. Those three parts of, call it the way, call it the believers, the followers of Christ in its nascent age, had that, and that influenced the Christian art. So we talked a little bit, very briefly, about the cave art, how somehow man, even under the most trying of conditions, has this need to express truths, not to arrive at them as a scientific inquiry. And we all recall that theology is the queen of sciences, a benevolent queen, but the queen of sciences. But in a true way, helps us to understand those truths. So the cavemen, having their, like 50,000 years ago, the caves in France, or here the Pecos Indians, it is just an astonishing thing, realizing the trials those people are under, they carve out this time. Same's true in the catacombs. That's where we first see Christian art. Estimated to about 265, the catacombs, especially in Rome, is where the earliest surviving artwork of painted frescoes in the meeting houses of persecuted Christians. That community of believers, and they're going to be interested in topics that are representations that are Christocentric, appeal to the rule of faith, and are ecclesial.
Right.
So I don't know if you all can see it, and I'll have it up on,
Yes.
but I think
Yeah.
we're all pretty familiar, the Good Shepherd.
Yes, the Good Shepherd. Yes.
And then down here. So that'll
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah. And that was the image that was used right in the Catechism.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And this is going to be kind of interesting because I'm going to be bringing up two special cases, the Shroud of Turin and the Tilma,
right,
within the concept here. Yes.
Absolutely.
And one of the things here is that we see a shaven man, and not too long after this is painted, we're going to be giving way to a bearded man. And that change within art then becomes, if you will, a part of the scientific line of inquiry. So art becomes science.
Right.
So, but this is not necessarily a show on the Shroud, but that's the way it is. The Edict of Milan allowed Christian art to emerge in its full splendor in many forms. So we're going back to that broad definition of art. In many forms of architecture, richer material, stone versus wood, was employed. Larger structures, painting, music, and musical instrumentation was had. And always with it Christocentric, a rule of faith. So whether that be the Trinity or, the virgin birth or life after death. That's what I mean with the credo, those 12 planks within the creed. And being ecclesial, I mean, for the body of believers, as opposed to just me and the object. It would be kind of a we.
And I do think that Christian art has to pay homage to the roots from which she came. The classical world in Greece, underneath, I do believe, the tutelage of, say, a Plato or an Aristotle, did direct the form of the artwork that was created to be moral, right? To not be really pornographic or crude. And so almost all of the images, even say the images of I'm trying to think of the very famous one of the priest, I forget how you pronounce his name, Laocoon, he's being consumed by the serpents from the sea, right? He and his sons are being dragged into the sea, the high priest. But I mean, there's an imagery in there which is both allegorical and beautiful. And that really was, and now if you go back and you talk again about when you were talking about what Plato had said about art, that it's not a science, right? Because what it yields is not a body of knowledge necessarily, but it is didactic insofar as it does form the human person. And so that is why almost all of the great Greek artwork and things that we still have today that were by, an amazing miracle, that we're able to go and revisit these things. They're both allegorical, but also extremely beautiful. And so I think that Christian art has a great depth of appreciation or thanksgiving that is owed to those minds that really brought the difference between science and artistry, like artisanship or utilitarianism, but more than that, the fruit of theology, right? Bringing that out, that beauty that is somewhere external to us, but also capable of being known by us and reproduced by us. And within those three elements that you have talked about, the Christocentric, the rule of faith, and an ecclesial sense, I think that in some like prefiguration, if we were really to plumb the depths of this, we would see things like that already present in the Greek form of artistry that was handed on to us. And maybe even you would see some of those elements. I'm not very familiar with Judaic art per se as a form, but I bet that we would see community, rule of faith, and then reverence towards the deity, toward God, which is not shown by its presence rather, but by its absence, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. It certainly does. All right, my friends, we're going to pick up with iconoclasm, that great heresy. Till then, fides, Oratio.